I had someone come visit yesterday who's struggling with anger, feeling a victim of another person and their actions towards him. And the way I hope I help is to recognize no one can do anything to you without God's permission. Now, a person could choose wrongly. You could be a messenger of evil or a messenger of good. That's the choice a person has. But how it affects another party, it's already not the choice of the individual. They're God's messenger. So I put this out there to everyone. Today, tomorrow, when something happens to you that a messenger of negativity, a messenger of nastiness, a messenger that they've chosen the wrong route, but it's affected you. Take a deep breath and think, this is nothing but a message from God. Yes, that person chose wrongly, and God will take care of that. That's his job. My job is, how do I respond godly? Not how do I respond as a victim of someone else, but how I respond in a godly way. So I put that out there for everybody. That was our discussion yesterday at TRC, which I'm still hoping that so many of you would gain tremendously from. I don't know exactly what's holding you back. We need to have a conversation about that, because that's where the real growth can take place. And you talk out the things, discuss them. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. And we share today with Michael in Germany, Brett in Pennsylvania, June is in Australia, John, North Carolina, Davida and Liba in New York, Diana is in Arizona, Andrew in New Jersey, Chava Celeste is in Boulder, Colorado, Clem in Brisbane, Australia, Eric is in Norway. We have Rabbi, she's in Morocco, Tangier, Morocco. Sandy in Michigan. David in California. TJ Terrence, Australia. Leah in Florida. Who else is joining us? Elisa in West Virginia. Jan in Mexico. Denise in New Jersey. Jane is in the Philippines. Eugenia in Calgary. Julia in Pennsylvania. Aaron is in Texas. Michael Lozata in Poland. Tim, Texas. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody here. We have Jay, Michael, Daniel, Clubhousers, Instagrammers. We've got with us Bella in, I forgot now, to remind me. Akoya in Lima, Peru. Jennifer is in Minnesota. We have Alice in Baltimore. We have the Lighters in, I'm not certain where. Good question. Janice, a happy 4th of July, or early happy 4th of July. We have from Brazil. I don't know how to. We have Hamid in Montreal. Lavana in Toronto. Wonderful. Marcelo is in Brazil. Okay, beautiful. Rachel in South Carolina. Eluz, Ernest. Bella's in New York. Oh, yeah, right. Not Bella. Oh my gosh. You have to remind me. All right. Okay. Winston has joined us also. Beautiful. What makes a Jew Jewish? In other faiths, in other beliefs, in other schools of thought and faith groups, primarily it's based on belief. Some base it on doing what God wants. But we've learned this before, and now we're going to learn it in depth in the next several days in defining what makes a Jew Jewish. Well, there's a verse in Deuteronomy that Moses tells the Jewish people before his passing that Ki chelik avaya amai. For God's people are a part of God. What does it mean, a part of God? How do we understand that? In other words, not part of the natural form of creation, which we'll explain, but part of God. Well, what it means is, as the verse says, a part of Havaya, this name of God. A Yud and a He, a Vav and a He, called the Tetragrammaton in English. This is the ultimate transcendent name of God. And as we learn in Genesis, V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, when it speaks about the soul into the body of Adam, it says he blew into his nostrils the breath of life. And the Zohar comments on this, that he blows. Where does he blow from? The very depth. Of course, God doesn't have any physical breath, right? That's coming from, deep down the lungs. Doesn't work that way, right? But it's a metaphor, of course. That means from the very innermost aspects of godliness. And that's why the Tetragrammaton brings out the idea of the innermost part of God. And again, why we speak about blowing, because that's the way we humans understand. When I speak, the energy that it takes, the breath that it takes for me to speak is minimal compared to, whoa, careful, might blow down the house. It comes from a very deeper place. That's why when you're blowing balloons for your child's birthday, right, you stop after a few because it takes a lot of breath. And actually, you don't even do that. You've got this, helium machine that does it for you, because it's a forceful, deep place where it comes from. That's all a metaphor to understand. Exactly in creation. God creates everything with the breath of his mouth. But the question is, what kind of breath? The breath of speech is an external aspect of the divine creation. The external, as we explained in the last part of Tanya, the second part of Tanya, the 11th chapter in particular, that that breath embodies itself in 10 utterances. Those 10 utterances then divide into letters and subdivision of letters that are substituted and just showing on the come down on the creative force of God. But it all emanates from a breath that brings out, verbalizes letters of creation, words that now become the vessel that hold the divine light of God to animate everything of creation, be it an Evan, which is a stone, be it a elan, which is a tree, or a specific type of tree, that it will animate those letters that give vitality with the breath of God. Again, that is all metaphorically bringing out the external aspect of God in creation. Now, what does it mean external? External means it is a means to an end rather than an end in itself. Right? So, a rock, a tree, an animal serve a purpose. They are not the ultimate purpose. But when it speaks about the soul that comes from the innermost part of the life force from God, again, metaphorically, that he blew, the internal, those are then that soul that comes from where it's initially begins, that divine soul, is a part of God. It's not the creative force of God, it's a part of God. It's an end in itself. Now, of course, from there it descends, the soul, the way it is on high, and it descends into a body that we all have, right? And that is the utterance, let us make man. That's also an utterance. It's not just the blowing. Because now that breath of that part of God that's a part of him is now brought into a physical body, that soul, in making us men. So that is a descent of bringing it down into the physical world. And the descent means a hiddenness of the divine power of God that gives life, vested into a body in an inferior reality called the physical world. Inferior because God is more concealed. As opposed to angels, for example. But angels, the concealment isn't as great, but they do not come from the name Havaya. They're not a creation of Havaya, of the Tetragrammaton, right? What are angels called? They're called Elohim, the name Elohim, which is an external name of God relative to the internal name of God of the Tetragrammaton. So even though angels are much more aware of godliness than we are, right? Again, because we're in a physical world, and the soul is in a physical body, in a physical world, yet we are, the soul rather, that Jewish soul is a part of God, right, as an end in itself, as opposed to angels that are lofty created beings, but they're creations, something from nothing. And even though they are loftier in their awareness of God, but they do not come from the internal aspect of the divine. They merely come from the external degree of godliness, right? The letters, the external breath, as it were, of God. But Adam, and comes from the Tetragrammaton, the innermost dimension of the divine. That's what defines the Jewish soul. What that means and how it plays itself out in defining the qualities of that soul, well, more to come. But this was just the beginning of this notion, of this concept. Any questions, any comments? All right. Looks like clarity everybody's got. Amazing. No questions. All right. Anybody Clubhouse? No questions. Doctor? No questions. Mhm. Oh, John. Okay. Is part of the divine soul in man, the Yehudi, and this is why that why placement of that soul in man does not subsume the animal soul. So here we're talking about the divine soul. That's a part of God that's blown in, a piece of, like just when you blow, you're blowing from a part of you, the inner part of you, right? So the inner part of God blowing in. Now, when it comes into the body, it still remains a divine soul. Now, the body itself has also a soul called the animal soul, or the life-giving soul of the body. See, the divine soul doesn't directly give vitality to the body. What gives the direct vitality to the body is the animal human soul. That's what gives vitality to the body. So we're talking here not about that soul that's vitalizing the body, even though it's in the body, it's the inspiration for the animal soul. Don't be such an animal. And therefore to give vitality to the body in a manner that is uplifting. How so? Well, in doing a mitzvah, right? But that's something we learned in the first part of Tanya at great length. Okay, Bella has a question. Isn't a non-Jew a part of God too? Excellent question. So this soul is uniquely a Jewish soul that we're talking about. A non-Jew has a nefesh hamaskelis, an intelligent soul that is b'tselem Elokim, created in the image of God. So a human has the image of God within them with the intelligent soul, right? Which gives them the power of intelligence to discern that which is right from wrong, that which what God wants and doesn't want. And therefore to do right from wrong. And that's why someone who isn't Jewish doesn't have to be Jewish to be saved, to have salvation, to be living in the times of Mashiach, for example, because they can do right from wrong, fulfilling what God wants from them. And therefore, you don't need to become Jewish. You can keep the 7 Noahide laws and be, in God's eyes, a upright, righteous, non-Jewish person. And that's amazing. And that's actually a responsibility that the Jewish people have, is to be a light unto the nations, not to convert people to become Jewish, but to be a light unto the nations, that they should bring godliness into their life. And hence, there's so many of you that are not Jewish that are here day in, day out learning, which is amazing. At the same time, there's something unique to the Jewish soul, being that part of God that has a uniqueness to it. And it expresses itself, which the Alter Rebbe spoke about in chapters 18 and 19, that, well, let me back up for a moment. At the beginning, I mentioned that, what makes the Jew Jewish, right? So what makes a non-Jew, what they the belief that they are, or the commitment, or the connection rather, that they have to another faith. Well, as I mentioned, it's based on a belief. If you believe, then you're part of that group. If you're a non-believer, well, then you're probably just going to burn in hell, or whatever. You're an infidel because you're not part of that group, and you have no salvation. That's how other faiths are. In other words, your belonging depending on you and your choice. Well, that's true, because their soul is a nefesh maskelis, is an intelligent soul, and based on the intelligence of their choice that they make is, where they belong and what they believe and who they are. It defines them, right? Not the Jew. What defines them is soul, not belief. So therefore, you can have a Jew, and I've done this. You can have a Jew who doesn't. You ask them, "Do you keep kosher?" Say, that's antiquated. We have refrigeration now. We don't have to worry about trichinosis. Do you fast on Yom Kippur? That's my ham and cheese day. Come on, nonsense. Well, you have to ask forgiveness. If I hurt your feelings, I have to ask for forgiveness. But hurt God's feelings? Come on. Get a life. So do you believe in God? I'm a scientist. I know better. Yeah, maybe on Thursdays. Mondays and Thursdays, maybe. I don't believe in God. So you tell that Jew, oh, you're not Jewish then. You don't observe the basic laws. You don't even fast on Yom Kippur. You don't even believe in God. Obviously, you're not Jewish. What will be the response of that person? They won't, for the most part, I won't say it will always be that way, but they won't say to you, oh, no, yeah, you're right. I was just born that way, but I'm not. No. They will say, I'm Jewish. And not only that, they might even slap you across the face and say, I'm as Jewish as you are. Now, how could someone say that to me, that they're as Jewish as me, when they don't observe and they don't believe? Every other faith would be a true statement. Well, if you don't believe in the basics of Christianity or of Islam or Hinduism or whatever it is, then you're a non-believer. You're not part of that faith group anymore, and you won't see yourself as part of that faith. You were maybe born into it, but have nothing to do with it anymore. But the Jew, even though it's not committed, doesn't even believe, still feels strongly as a Jew. It makes sense. Well, actually, it makes perfect sense based on what we just learned. It's based on soul, but that's unique to the Jewish people. Only the Jewish people define their Jewishness based on a soul. Now we've defined what that soul, where it comes from. We're going to learn more about that makeup of that soul, the quality of the soul. But it's a part of God. So that's what defines us. Period. And like period, nothing after that period. Not like, but you got to believe too. No, since I have a godly soul, the Jewish soul, let's call it a Jewish soul. I think that's the easier term. A Jewish soul that defines me, and that's what makes me Jewish. Right? Either your mother's Jewish, or yes, you converted according to Jewish law, halacha, by a proper court of law, based in, that's based on Jewish law, then you are Jewish, because that soul is something that God gives and defines you, therefore. So it's God who's defining you as a Jew. Every other faith and religion, it's you yourself that defines yourself. Therefore, you can opt in and opt out. A Jew can never opt out. They could say, I'm no longer, and Yes, Jews have adopted other religions, but in the end, they're still a Jew. Period. Because of what we learned over here. Again, that's extremely unique and is not found elsewhere, and that's why there's a difficulty in people appreciating this and understanding this notion, this idea, because again, it's not found elsewhere. Jane. Excuse me. Would it be wrong for a non-Jew to define themselves by their soul too? Now that I am learning Tanya, I recognize the real essence of man. Well, you are defined by your soul. It is true. The soul that's an image of God, yes. So it wouldn't be wrong, not at all. That soul that defines you, right? That therefore it will express itself by commitment to the 7 Noahide laws, universal laws, as Moses gave in the Torah. Yes, that would be fine. That would be actually perfect. Aaron, does Aleph represent the breath of God? No. Actually, He does. He is just breath, not Aleph. I've heard the particular name, Aaron asks, which you used for angels, can also be described the attribute of God, which is the opposite of chesed. They added meaning to that. Yeah, God's name is God's names are responsible for creation, and it depends on the context and how they're used. Will then give us an understanding of what that name means. So yes, Elohim. Sorry, I don't have it here. Elohim. Oh yes, I do. Also means Gvura. It also means diversity, which is in Gvura. Also means the power of concealment. That's what Gvura is. So again, it depends on the context of what is being used. But yes, correct, Aaron. Okay, good conversation here. Thank you. So Bella, excellent. Put 2 question marks before you ask a question so I could see it easily. Jersey Yid, what chapter are we learning in Tanya? We're in chapter 4 of the 3rd part of Tanya, Igeres Tshuva. That's where we are. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Amazing, folks. Thank you for the conversation. And we will continue this conversation, God willing, tomorrow. Rambam is coming up now. Please do join us. And last night we had Torah Studies class, which was, I enjoyed it. You can get if you go to my YouTube channel, Tanya Rabbi, or you go to TanyaRabbi.com. You get it there. And wonderful TRC. And wonderful to continue our daily conversation and learning together. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad.Chabad in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, wonderful day. Thank you for joining.